What's up, folks? Clint Bay. There are some in D.C. who believe that Senator Schumer didn't stand strong on the issue of government shutdown and that the Dems are in need of new leadership. Be interested to hear your thoughts on the subject matter. This and much more we're discussing today. Let's get to it. Let's talk. Good. All right, folks. Welcome to Let's Talk. Clint Bay.
Rob Romeo.
So what's happening?
I don't know, another day, another week.
Yeah.
A lot going on, though. Jeez.
A lot going
As we
on.
left off last time, we were talking about the the deportation, and then the courts, getting involved. And so
Right.
and we said it's going to be a wild couple of weeks, and we're in the middle of it. So it's
It
a wild
has
couple of weeks.
It has been. I want to go back to something you mentioned in the last episode too, um, regarding Schumer's position
Yeah.
on the government shutdown.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he was. You could go back and analyze it, and I think that if you do, he's probably correct in politically doing the right thing to keep the government open.
Mm-hmm.
But the messaging on it, the rollout of it, wasn't a coherent message. He didn't get enough Democrats to go along with him and stand with him, and present the position, and maybe get something, as Nancy Pelosi said, get something for it. Say, look, we're going to
Right.
keep the government open, but you're going to agree. For example, I heard one of the things, you're going to agree to not. You're going to put it in writing. You are not touching Social Security.
Yeah.
You are not touching Medicaid, and then we'll keep the government open.
Yeah.
Something, but nothing was done. So it was a it was a weak ass kind of move. It was the right move, and that was costing him a lot of political capital, which I think is probably completely drained for him personally.
Yeah. So what do you think about? I'm going to take from something you said earlier before we turned the camera on. AOC and others calling for him to step down because of his decision.
Yeah, that's I've been watching AOC and Bernie, and they're getting thousands and thousands of people to come, and I think that Bernie is just a character. He's like a caricature, but he's good. He's smart. He's always been on point. He's always been at the right instance that it's the rich that's the problem in this country. That they are it's become an oligarchy, and he knew that. He's been railing about that for 20 years or more, and so he's right about what he says. And he's such a caricature. It's kind of fun to watch. AOC has a great voice. I think she's getting a good following, and she's saying I think she relates very, very well to many, many people, and the more she gets out there, the more she's relatable. But the point that we're talking about is, the messenger, and at some point, like Biden had realized
Right.
that the next term was not right.
Right,
He was
right.
not fit for the next term.
Gotcha.
Nancy Pelosi realized she had to step down, and she really should be, she's brilliant. She's done great things. She's probably one of the best, women politicians in the history of the country. And Schumer, I think, is got to realize he's at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just the glasses and the mannerisms, and it's no more. We can't say that's our leader.
Yeah.
I mean, it just in this day and age, I hope that he gets the message that he's done so many great things, including for New York State, including for right here, and he's been great, over the years as a leader. But at this point in this day and age, in this era of the Trumpism and so forth, he's got to be the back of the house.
Yeah.
We got to find a leader to be the front of the house. We could talk about who we think may be some of those people.
Yeah, the thing that I think about, just listening to you now and reflecting on what you said prior to the camera coming on, and the person's calling for him to step down, and ultimately saying what he could or should have done.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, and I'm not aware of, anything, but how much dialogue went on prior to him making this decision? Like, how many may have suggested, hey, let's go after X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
in that negotiation? Because if they hadn't, then it's a moot point to say it after the fact.
Yeah, exactly. And he already wrote a book. He was going on a book tour. I'd love to know what happened, just like you said, but
Right.
he's got to write another book to find out what really happened
Yeah, yeah.
at that point. So I feel bad for him on a personal level that he's going out with a book tour and he's got something to say, but I think he's got to make a move with this. He's got to get together with the Democrats in the Senate and say who's going to be my next leader. I mean, Mitch McConnell had to step down. Nancy Pelosi had to. I think it's time that he gives up that leadership role to somebody else. I mean, I people that people are talking about Fetterman. Certainly he's got the tough guy image. I mean, you're not going to argue with that guy when he makes a statement. He's got the right tough guy image. He can stand up to it.
Right,
He
right.
can stand up to a bully. He's the kind of guy that you can just see visually
Hmm.
stand up to a bully. And I think he's pretty moderate on most of his issues, which is pretty good. I mean, John Tessler, I remember him from as a senator from was it Wyoming, but he
Yeah,
lost.
yeah.
He would have been someone I would have appreciated, as a leader in the Senate. But doesn't you don't have to be in office to be a leader of the movement that's
That's right.
coming, because
That's
there's
right.
a movement coming.
That's right. Well, we're interested in hearing your thoughts on the matter. Did Schumer make the right decision or not? Please leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. We will respond.
I gotta say, at the bottom line, it's probably the right decision. It
I
just,
think so.
it was probably the right decision. You got a lot of time now to argue. All these, it's like all these other things come up day after day, week after week. That there's opportunities for the opposition, whether they be Democrats or just Republicans that don't like what's happening.
Yeah.
The opposition of what's happening, there's an opportunity for you every day to say this is wrong. You know,
That's right.
this is wrong. We can't do this. We can't do this. This deportation thing is a huge thing.
Hmm.
There's civil rights involved. So one of the other things, the disastrous things that possibly disastrous things that are coming out of this administration. You mentioned that there's that beginning talk about someone mentioned the word segregation.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? What's that about?
Well, apparently, an executive order was signed to roll back
Mm.
protections against segregation.
Mm.
So ultimately, social media, as you can imagine, YouTube particularly, people are essentially going crazy about the fact that it appears that the Trump administration has, for all intents and purposes, made segregation legal. And you literally
By
have people
executive order.
by executive
Here we
order.
go.
Yeah, right. And so, but this, I'm glad you said that because there is a serious misconception on the part of many that the president has absolute power.
Right.
They don't understand that the legislature
Mm-hmm.
can take those executive powers from them,
Mm-hmm.
except the fact that the legislature is majority Republican.
And they're bending over and letting him
Of
do what he
course.
wants to do, and
Of course.
they're being, very compliant with what's happening. The Republicans obviously have capitulated 100% of their backbone and their position as the first branch of government.
Right.
The first branch of government,
Right.
the Congress.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think many people don't understand. Congress can still weigh in at any point. Federal judges can always weigh in, as they had, with deportation. He didn't listen.
Yeah.
In similar situations. So it's not necessarily etched in stone simply because he signed an executive order. But I think people are more concerned about the thought process behind it.
Yes, absolutely.
What are you after? What are you seeking to do? Some
Yeah.
people are saying he's trying to start a fight.
Yep.
Other people feel that it is specifically targeting so-called, I always say so-called black people. I'm brown, but you get my point. African Americans, and minorities in general. So I don't know,
I think
what the plans are.
he loves to divide. He's always been a divider.
Mhm.
This is something that he sees as a winning argument for his base or his people, and he was a divider in the 80s or 90s when he came after the Central Park Five, which we talked about on one of our earlier shows.
Right.
Because he realizes that if he couches it in certain terms, he's going to get the right response
That's right.
from his people.
From his base. That's
Yep.
right.
And he loves that.
Yeah.
He loves the support that he gets by throwing stuff out there. He loves to throw these bombs out there.
Yeah.
But once again, it's rolling back so much progress we made in this country.
Yeah.
It's putting us in a position, obviously people say that there's too much, wokeness and whatever. We've gone maybe too far in certain issues, and yes, there can be some agreement there. There definitely can be some agreement there, but you
Yeah.
can't go back on segregation is a problem.
The thing is ultimately, clearly, people, as I mentioned, people are trying to peg it as an attack on those referred to as African American because of rolling back DEI. Now, roll back on previous protections against segregation and all other things. This talk about, removing people from the military, people of color,
Yeah.
all this kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
it's clearly, as you referred to, I believe, in our first published episode, the white nationalist Christian movement.
Yeah.
This appears to be right out of the playbook,
Oh, certainly is.
where you
Yeah.
you rage a civil war of sorts by legal means, or at least
Yeah.
legal
Yeah.
on its face.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important. But what's interesting, and what I think will be interesting, is whether or not this type of effort is actually managed and or disabled by the courts, or if we'll see more of the situation like with deportation, where the Trump administration will essentially ignore them and move forward anyway.
Yeah, I think they want the fight, and the fight's going to happen in the courts. And there was an interesting thing that he did. He goes after some of the law firms now.
Yeah.
So he's trying to put a chilling effect on the law firm. But I think that can't. I think that there's going to be always enough. I hope. Let's hope that there's always going to be enough legal, pushback and safeguard
Right.
and
Right.
through our court systems. And I think the deportations first, this segregation issue may come up as another one second.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he wins the fights, but he likes just having the fight. He likes just having the fight.
Yeah.
They just got to get it out there. They won some things on the DEI, the rollbacks when they get into these federal agencies and in like the Department of Defense and stuff, they start actually pulling people out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a win for them. It's a huge, terrible thing that's happening.
Well, you had the fiasco with them removing Jackie Robinson from the website. That ultimately was celebrating, military heroes, and they got so much pushback, and they said it was a mistake, and they put it back.
Yeah, yeah.
So one thing we have seen
they keep
Trump
trying.
do,
They keep trying.
yeah, he talked tough to
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah.
Canada flexed. He
Yeah.
backed off.
Yeah.
He talked tough again. They flexed. He backed off.
Yeah, yeah.
And not for nothing. It could be a tactic to force them.
Yeah.
As a means of leveraging his power, which
Yeah.
we can't deny. But yeah, he moonwalks a lot, man.
He just has to have something to say every day that keeps his people, happy for that he's there.
Yeah, I think so. Again, we like to hear your opinion on everything from the rollback on segregation, protection against segregation, to DEI. This has been, the DEI issue has been discussed, at length, obviously.
Yeah.
And any other issues, the Jackie Robinson thing has essentially been remedied, but it's fair to wonder what the thought process was behind removing, him and so many others that may have been removed. And even this idea about,
wasn't there an issue with Colin Powell too? Like,
yeah, that would be crazy.
I mean, they're having issues with everybody.
That would be a little bit crazy to
Yeah,
remove Colin Powell. Anybody at that matter, but certainly that guy.
Yeah.
That would be a little strange for them to
I
do
think the
something
strategy
like
is just to push the envelope, see how far they go.
that. I think so. One thing I will say though, the argument about America becoming an oligarchy. America's been an oligarchy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been an oligarchy since.
Yes.
Certainly, arguably since the Depression, but possibly even before.
Speaking of image and speaking of oligarchies, one of the greatest presidents we've ever had that fought against the oligarchies when they really came in, the Robert Barron days of the last turn of the century and the beginning of the 19th century or 20th century, was President Roosevelt. But see, he was the right guy with the right image to do it. We don't have that one yet. You got to have. He was a tough ass guy, a soldier, an outdoorsman, this. But what did he do? He went after those corporations, and he went after the money guys, and just took them down. And so, they got built back up recently. And the one thing that's really built them up, the one thing that's really changed the government and changed our country for the worse, is the Citizens United case, where
corporations
corporations
Free
first they
speech.
say corporations are persons,
Mhm.
and then they say corporations can give anything they want and do anything they want in politics.
If we could, I want to pause on that because now I want to talk about that because I have an interesting position on that.
All right, well, let's go
So
ahead.
again, we want to hear your opinion
Yeah.
on anything you heard us say so far.
Yeah.
So on the subject of Citizens United and the corporate person, I want to go back to when I was on the council. I think I was still a 4th district councilor. Occupy Wall Street was going on.
Ah.
We had our own version of Occupy Wall Street here, or
Yeah.
Occupy Solana Street.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman who came to the council. He went to former councilor Kathleen Joy, and the push was to do a memorializing legislation against Citizens United. And I met with the gentleman. I'm going to be very candid here. I don't know if it's safe to be candid.
Well, this is what we're talking
I
about.
met with the
This is our show.
gentleman,
You
and
gotta be candid on our show.
that's right. And he asked me about
Otherwise, why do it?
eliminating the corporate person, and I asked him flat out, if he knew how high up it went. He didn't seem to really know. And I'm being candid here. I did not vote for it that year. They came back the following year, and I did vote for it. But I remember saying to a reporter from Syracuse.com, because he asked, well, you didn't vote for it last year. Why do you vote for it now? I said, well, because ideally it's right. I said, but it'll never happen.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I said that, and right after I said that, I said to him that the United States of America has a Duns and Bradstreet number, South 10th Street, D.C.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to have a Duns and Bradstreet number? It's a corporation.
Yeah.
Right. So, the government itself
Yeah. This is a corporation.
is a de facto administrative government. It's a corporation.
Yeah.
So, to dismantle the corporate person is to take away the United States' ability to sue and to be sued.
Yes. Well, there we have to make the distinction. So
Right.
it's a corporation for not for profit, so to speak, or a governmental agency organization, or for-profit corporations, and that's where we got into huge problems when we got for-profit corporations having all the rights of the citizen.
Yeah.
And then, you know, think of the money. Look what just Elon Musk is doing, for example. One person. I mean, how much influence he has, how much money he has now. He's saying if you vote against this or you vote against it, I'm going to primary. I'm going to put 20 million, $100 million into a congressional race against you. If you don't do what I say to do. What is that? That is not what we're supposed to be about.
I think I'm gonna be honest here though. I could agree with that, but I'm not afraid of the competition. Just speaking for me personally, and he's just saying it out loud.
Yeah.
We know people have been doing that.
It's not. I don't want to
for
blame
ages.
him for it.
Yeah.
He's just taking
He's just
advantage
not smart enough to not say it out loud. Right. So
But-
he does pigeonhole himself in that respect. He makes himself a target,
Yeah.
and as a result, makes it possible for people to neutralize
Yeah.
his effort.
I also think this too, and especially on a local level, we talk a lot about local races. I think people used to come to us as party leaders and so forth. They would say, well, how much money I need to raise for this race? How much money I need? Well, this last race they spent $1 million for the mayor's race, or $3 million, or $600,000. With the right candidate and the right message, you don't have to spend a whole lot at all.
It doesn't matter, right?
You don't have to spend a whole lot at all.
I always say money doesn't vote.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't. If people like you, they want to vote for you. They hear about you, they're going to vote for you. The money doesn't matter, except when you get to a national race, and then you got to get your
you need that branding in a national race, and that makes all the difference. Locally, it shouldn't matter at all.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say though, the news and propaganda has made it very impossible to put your finger on what's actually legitimate, and the politics have now trumped government, which is essentially management of people's assets and operation. But the politics has taken precedent.
It is. There's no question about it. That's the other thing we get to. I mean, the two things that are problematic more so than anything else is the money in politics, as we talk about, and the media being usurped by, the money, and these it's just like social media, but not just social media, but propaganda in
Yeah,
media
propaganda media.
has
That's right.
has taken over,
Yeah.
and it gets into people don't have a whole lot of time to spend drilling into the issues and understanding what's really happening behind the scenes. That's why we have talk shows like
Yeah,
this.
that's
Yeah,
right.
that's why we do that. But so if they hear something just like a 2-second blurb that Trump said or somebody
Oh,
said,
man.
that's it. They're going with it.
It's gone.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's so much easy to manipulate through the media today than it's ever been. And it's so important for the media to get their act together.
Well,
There's got to be some outlets that are able to reach more people.
the right now the most exciting thing created, which is equally simultaneously the most frightening thing created, is AI.
Yeah.
You know, and on YouTube, there's so many stories like
You don't know
that
if
look like it's in the tabloid. Yeah, arguably it's probably not true.
is it even real? Did it come
Right.
from? Is it just computer generated?
It's computer generated, or somebody who's very good with Photoshop
Yeah.
put together their own
Yeah,
story
yeah.
because it gets clicks and it's on their channel, so they monetize.
See how dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
The times are. You know,
Yeah,
and.
yeah. So once again, please leave your comments, your thoughts. Where were we at? You were saying something to sum up our conversation.
Well, we were saying we need to get back to the primaries,
Right.
which are coming up. We want to bring some guests on, maybe next time.
Yep.
We'll get into that. We'll keep monitoring, see what's happening, talk about what's happening on the national level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. So we're ready to go.
Now, there was something else you wanted to add that you.
Well, I just want to say, as always, seek beauty and grace, man.
Yeah, seek beauty and grace. Khalid Bey,
Rob Roman.
let's talk. Catch you on the next.